Hey guys, my name is Ryan Michaels. I'm the owner and builder here at Kokomo Vans. Welcome to my shop. Today we're installing an insulated subfloor into this van here. Here in my shop I build out Ram ProMasters like this one. But everything in this video today can also be applied to Ford Transits and Mercedes Sprinters. We're going to be focusing on two things today. First, making a super sturdy subfloor so that it doesn't flex as you're walking on it, and so that you can attach your other furniture elements in your van to the subfloor. Second, we're going to be focusing on maximizing airflow underneath that subfloor so that we can prevent mold as best as possible. And I do sell these vans when they're done being built, so if that interests you, head over to my website, kokomovans.com. Alright, here's a couple things that you'll definitely need to knock out this project. Some 3/4 inch birch plywood. You're going to need 3 sheets of it. It's a jigsaw so that you can cut your actual plywood subfloor. Some construction adhesive, like a lot of construction adhesive. Some 1 1/4 inch screws. A drill and a countersink drill bit, or a regular drill bit in one of these. Your choice of square to draw some square lines, and a straight edge to draw some long straight lines. You'll also need some sandpaper and a sanding block. And for this part of the build, we're going to be using a rigid foam board for insulation. We're using this instead of materials like wool or 3-inch Insulated because with those materials you won't get any airflow underneath your subfloor, and later down the road that can lead to problems with mold. The last thing you need to get started is some wood to support your plywood subfloor. For this you can pick up some 1x2s, or if you have a table saw you can rip down some 2x4s like I am here. I'm cutting these to 3/4 of an inch because that's just thicker than the foam board insulation that I have. Just make sure your wood supports are not thinner than your foam board insulation. To get started in the van here, let's just start laying out these support pieces where we want them to go underneath the subfloor. Some things you want to consider are where the heavy pieces of your build are going to go and where the most foot traffic is going to be. I have the supports pretty close together around the wheel wells for this build because that's where all the battery and the water systems are going to be. And this is going to be a fixed bed configuration with a garage in the back. So for that spot I'm going for about 10-inch gaps between the supports. Alternatively up front, that's where all the foot traffic is going to be. So for this walking area up around here, I'm keeping around 6 inches of space between the supports. Right here you can see that there's continuous support from front to back. And that's there to support the seam between the 2 pieces of plywood that are running lengthwise up and down the van. You want to make sure that seam is evenly supported so that one side isn't higher than the other. Once you have your support pieces laid out how you want, go ahead and mark where all of those are. Now it's time to surface prep that floor to glue down these pieces of wood. So go ahead and vacuum up and clean it as best as you can. Now is also a good time to do some rust mitigation, painting wherever you see exposed metal. Now on those high spots that you marked out, go ahead and scuff up the paint with your sandpaper and sanding block. I'm using 80 grit sandpaper here. This is going to give the adhesive a better surface to grab onto than just the smooth paint of the van. Now you get to clean a little more because you made a mess with all that sanding. Now it's finally time to start gluing some wood to metal. Before doing this, you definitely want to read your tube of construction adhesive. This Gorilla heavy duty stuff that I have here says within 10 minutes of dispensing the construction adhesive, press the surfaces together and hold for at least 20 to 60 seconds. And it takes 24 hours to cure completely. You're going to want to do this in small sections with only a couple pieces of wood at a time. Once you get those pieces laid down on the glue, go ahead and put something like a scrap piece of plywood on top of them. Then whatever heavy stuff you got, just go ahead and put them on there and weigh it down. These things here are drywall extension poles. You don't exactly need them. They just make it easier for me in my shop. I like to let these sit and cure for about 3 hours. But since it was already getting late, I just let these sit overnight. Damn, is it hot outside already? So this construction adhesive has been curing overnight. Let me show you how strong this is. Well, instead of pulling that up, it broke this. It's pretty strong. So there you go. If you do this right, you don't have to put screws through the bottom of your van. After you repeat that super time-consuming process for all the other supports, now it's time to actually start cutting out that plywood for the floor. With this van, I'm lucky enough to have this flooring template basically already pre-made. If you're not as lucky as I am in this situation, don't worry, I've been there. I'll explain in a second here how to make your own template. Start with taking a measurement off of the wheel well to see where that seam line is going to be at. You know, that line that right here, I'm pointing at it. Then take that measurement over to your template and line up that seam perfectly on there so that it'll go right down the middle of that support piece. Then after making sure everything's square and lined up exactly how you want it, go ahead and trace out that template onto your 3 pieces of plywood. Oh, and I almost forgot to show you where that other seam is supposed to go. Just want to make sure that this seam is evenly supported also. So if your van doesn't come with a super convenient floor template like mine does, you're going to have to make your own templates. You can make that out of extra cardboard laying around from all the products and stuff that you're buying for your van. Or you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy a roll of this stuff. It's called Ram board. You can get a roll of this stuff from Home Depot or Lowe's. It's called Ram board. I'll link it below. It's just way easier to use for templates than cardboard is. I use it for that window back there and it was really nice. You're going to make these templates in sections. Start with eyeballing it to get in the ballpark of where you need it. Then cut that out and come back with something to scribe that edge profile. Lately I like doing this with my speed square since I can keep that one consistent point square against the edge. And once you're almost there, you can just start cutting little scrap pieces and taping them in place. So you can see that this method totally works well. You just have to be patient and put in your time here. It's going to take a minute. Alright, time to start making some sawdust again. Your jigsaw is going to be your best friend for lots of things in van building, and this is one of them. But for long straight cuts, something like a circular saw, skill saw, or track saw works better. If you've never seen a track saw, it's basically just a circular saw on a track, and it gives you surgical precision with your cuts. Quick tip for jigsaws here, if you use them upside down, you actually get a much cleaner finished edge. At least that messy tear out from the cuts will just be hidden underneath. But if this seems kind of difficult for you, don't worry about it. Safety is way more important than the clean finished edge of a subfloor here. Sometimes you'll have to make little adjustments back and forth to get them to sit flush like you want. For example, here I cut this piece intentionally long so that I can mark a clean edge line. After I cut those, I know it'll be perfectly flush and have a tight seam. Once your plywood's sitting how you want, you're going to want to make some measurements for some pilot holes. Do this by going off of the edges and marking on the plywood where the center lines are for each support piece. Then use your long straight edge to mark out those lines. Make a mark where you want your screws to go. I'm shooting for every 12 to 16 inches here. Now, while being careful that the plywood doesn't shift while you're doing this, grab your drill and countersink bit to start drilling some pilot holes. It's important to use a countersink bit so that the wood screw heads sit below the surface of the plywood. You really don't want anything protruding up, messing up whatever flooring you're going to put on top of this subfloor. After you're done drilling, you can check to see where those holes landed. They don't have to be perfectly centered, but you do want them all to be kind of close to the middle. Before the next step, this is your last chance to touch up anywhere that might have exposed metal from sanding that didn't end up getting glued. Now before we glue and screw this down, we just got to lay in our insulation. I ended up using 2 4x8 sheets of this foam board insulation here. I find that a handsaw works best for cutting this stuff without blowing foam dust in your face like a power saw would. You definitely don't want to be breathing in any foam dust from that stuff. Alright, we're almost done here, but I forgot. The aluminum foil side, that goes on the other side. Makes a little more sense. Alright, so it should look something like this when you're done with it. Don't be afraid to use some tape to hold down all the pieces that you kind of have to Tetris in there. But the tighter you stuff these in here, the better it'll be insulated. So you want to get these cuts to be pretty tight in there so that these kind of just hold themselves in. But now that that's set, we can actually put that plywood in. I like using construction adhesive for this and not wood glue. That's because when you're using wood glue, you need 2 near perfect surfaces to be in contact with each other. And there's no way that I'm getting all these supports to come perfectly together with that plywood. There's just going to be some spots where the faces just don't meet up perfectly. And that's where the thicker consistency of construction adhesive shines, and it still glues wood to wood plenty strong. Alright, bombs away. Okay, this is the home stretch now and arguably the easiest part. Now it's just a matter of laying down the glue and plopping in the plywood, making sure everything is lined up perfectly before screwing it in. So now you should have your super sturdy subfloor that you can put all your other stuff on top of. And it also has some really good airflow underneath. You can see underneath the foam board insulation here. I hope that was super helpful for you guys. I know this is the first van building tutorial on this channel here. I think it came out pretty good. This is the, I'm in the middle of editing it right now. But yeah, give me some feedback in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys think. Any questions, shoot away, or any things that you want more tutorials on for other van builds, let me know. Well, till then, my name is Ryan Michaels with Kokomo Vans, and I'll see you guys in the next one.